All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Odus Evbagharu. I am the Harris County Democratic Party Chair and your Texas Democratic Party Treasurer. I am joined tonight with Andre Treiber, who is our DNC youth member and also the chair of the DNC Youth Council. We brainstormed together a little bit after convention about doing some post-convention recaps so we can inform you all about what's been happening with the party since convention, what happened at convention, and detailed all of those things. For those of you that weren't with us a little earlier, we went over some housekeeping rules. Right now, currently, we have you on mute. It's not because we don't want to hear your lovely voices, but we want to get through the presentation so that way we can take your questions after we're done talking and telling you what's been going on respectfully in the state of Texas with the Democratic Party. Please feel free to use the chat if you have any questions. Also, feel free to put in the chat, introduce yourself in the chat, where you're from. We know you're not just only in Harris County. I know we have folks from all over the state of Texas, just like Andre is. And I'd be remiss, I think I saw Rosales, who is also a DNC member as well, too, on this call. I see a lot of wonderful Democratic leadership on this call as well, too. Very grateful for that. And Andre, man, tell us a little bit about yourself and let's get this party rocking.
Well, hey, y'all. My name's Andre Treiber. Thank you, Odus, for inviting me to come and talk to y'all tonight. So as Odus said, I currently serve as one of Texas's elected DNC members. In 2020, we elected 11 of us to go represent Texas at the national party, and the Youth Caucus elected me. Before that, I was on the SDC for a couple of terms representing SD 14, which is at that point was mostly Travis County. I am just like, I'm a convention nerd. Convention is one of my favorite things to work on at the party. Every convention since 2016, I've put out a delegate guide. I have no clue how many trainings. And so when Odus was saying, hey, since the convention this year, things just went a little different than they have in the past. We want to kind of do a debrief and just talk about it. I was of course happy to do that. So the only other thing I want to say is yes, I'm calling in from Austin, but it does feel partial homecoming for me because I still have an 832 number, and in fact through my life I had a 281 and a 713 before that. So it's a good home crowd. And I also saw Fort Bend County in the chat as well. And so, loving that kind of crowd. But yeah, I'm ready to go ahead and just get started. Do you just want to go over like that timeline that we were talking about, and I can just start from there?
Absolutely. Let's dive into kind of, and I see there's some Montgomery County folks. I see some counties there in leadership. This is great. Bexar County. This is awesome. This is what we wanted. We want folks from all over Texas so we can tell you guys what's going on as well too. And so, Andre and I've been talking. One of the things that's really important for folks to understand and get a better sense of, and I think some of you understand this, is how do we get here, right? Like, how do we get to convention? Like, how does this process start with our resolutions and our rules committee and things like that? And as you all know, you all partook in whether it was your Senate district convention or, as we do in Harris County, a Senate district county joint convention. For the purposes of this conversation, so we don't keep going back and forth between Senate district and county joint conventions, we're going to say local conventions. And so at these local conventions, we'll put resolutions in place that'll go to the temporary resolution committee that is appointed by the chair and different folks who sit on that temporary platform, committee. And then we'll also have people selecting your delegates that end up going to convention. The process is really cool. You get to choose folks who you want to sit on the different committees that want to sit on those different committees and want to nominate themselves. And the Texas Democratic Party opens that filing up for everyone to run for party officers positions, from chair to vice chair, the vice chair finance to secretary to treasurer, and then on down to be your numerous Senate district committee members as well, two from each Senate of the 31 Senate districts we have in Texas. And then you get to file for the different committees that you'll have at the actual convention that year. And just a reminder, convention is every 2 years, not every 4 years. And for me, it's always important to go through that timeline because we've been in the process for so long. Sometimes you forget what the process looks like and how we get to our destination. And so for us, it's so important to always rehash it and think about it so that way we can get folks involved at the ground level and not just wait till convention where they're asking questions, but we're proactively speaking about how we get there. So it starts by those local conventions. And then Andre, after those local conventions and we select delegates and all that good stuff, what happens after that?
Yeah, so I'm glad that you pointed out that like we do have conventions every 2 years, because sometimes when people think convention, they think the big national convention with the states having their delegations and we're selecting a presidential candidate and all that stuff. But the entire structure of the Texas Democratic Party is actually like based around the convention cycle. Not everyone necessarily knows that. So, we have the SDEC, that's the State Democratic Executive Committee. I know we're going to refer to that a lot tonight. And that is that's like the executive board that operates for the Texas Democratic Party in between conventions is really the way you can think of it. Because even though the SDEC, for example, is like passing rules changes, well, none of those rules changes actually become permanent until the convention actually approves them. So conventions are actually a really big deal with the way that we've set up and structured our party. So it is, if you kind of care about the inner workings of the state party, then kind of knowing the sort of natural rhythm of a convention cycle is really important. So let's keep going through this timeline. So we had our local conventions all across the state. They're going to look different place to place depending on where you are. But again, the important thing is you come out of those conventions with, your local convention probably passed, a couple of resolutions, maybe a rules proposal, maybe some platform planks, and you selected your delegates that are going to be going to the state convention. That's the important stuff that happens there. Then you have this period of time in between March, which is when those local conventions are, and then July, which is when the state convention is, that a bunch of temporary committees are going to work. And these temporary committees, the big one we'll probably talk about a lot is platform, because platform is one of the things where we went a little off script this convention. But these are appointed by the chair. So for instance, platform this cycle had something like 80 to 100 people, appointed to serve on temporary platform committee. And what they do is they work as a committee and with staff to take what was the most recently passed platform. So in this case, they would be working with the document from 2020 and updating it and going through and making amendments and stuff. And they are basically preparing that document to be handed off to the committee at convention that we elect. And the same thing is kind of going on with, there's temporary rules and temporary resolutions committees. Those are doing a bunch of work to gather up the things that were passed from local conventions. And if they meet a certain threshold, like they were passed by enough local conventions, then they just, clean it up and send it on to the full-on committee. If it was only passed by like one convention, then they might get down in the weeds and decide, hey, is this something that our party should be doing or not? Is this referred to the wrong place, and so on. So a lot of work that temporary committees are doing are really putting like everything together just so that the final work can be done at convention. And so they're not necessarily committees that people are very familiar with, but a lot of what comes out of convention really was set in motion by the things that were going on in these temporary committees. So then we get to convention and we are all just having a wonderful time. We're seeing all of our friends. It was great to see everyone, since we didn't get a chance to do that in 2020. So there were some people that I saw that were friends I hadn't seen for 4 years. And it was just really great to see everyone. We're going to our caucuses, we're going to trainings and panels and having elections. And then, we would divide up in our Senate districts. We would elect people to the committees at convention. So once we were meeting in our Senate district, those remaining committees would have been resolutions, platform, nominations, and rules. And then on the final day of convention, while we would all be on the convention floor, those committees would be doing a bunch of their work. They would be passing, once they were done, they would adjourn and send a committee report to the floor. Us as delegates would adopt the report, and that is how we would adopt, for instance, our platform or new rules. But this is where things diverged. And so, like multiverse movies are just all the rage right now. I've been reading all sorts of books with fun alternate timelines and everything. And this is what happened to us. So we had, a little diverging event in our timeline. And normally, what would happen at our conventions is we would have adopted a report from the platform committee. We would have adopted all the resolutions that came out of the resolutions committee. Rules that came out of the rules committee, and the nominations report, which is what would have triggered the statewide officer elections. And then, we would have adjourned after that. But what happened at this current convention is that in order for us to, complete business, we have to have a quorum of delegates. And the way quorum works in our party is that in our rules, when you open the convention, that is when you establish quorum, and quorum is basically in place until there is a ruling that there is no longer quorum. So it's not like there's a situation where there's someone, at the door, that and they're like keeping track of attendance in the hall and adding 3 people when they come in and then removing 7 when they walk out. And so we had quorum, and then at some point on the last day, there was a tipping point where enough folks had left the room that when a point of order was called saying that we did not have quorum, that point of order was upheld by the chair. And so we had to adjourn our convention. That's basically, once we are determined to not have quorum, we pretty much have to make the call right there to either adjourn or adjourn for another time. And obviously with the convention, once you have people leaving town, can't exactly adjourn for another time. So we had to adjourn right there. So that put us in a really interesting spot because we had not done necessarily everything according to plan, which was included passing a couple of resolutions that were still out of date and passing the update to our platform, which brought us into not a completely unprecedented spot within our party, but it was a spot that we had not been in quite some time. For at least literally as long as I've been involved. And folks were saying that this happened at least once, like in the 80s. So technically we had some precedents for it, but it had been a minute since we had adjourned without that. So at the SDC level, we ended up having to call a specially called meeting to take up the platform and a couple and then 4 remaining resolutions. And that is actually what we all just did last Saturday on the 6th. It was a special call meeting of the SDC that also included everyone who served on the convention platform committee because the chair was able to do that because we were operating under kind of a committee of the whole. And Odus, do you want to kind of tell folks what that meeting was like?
Yeah, absolutely. And Andre, thank you so much for going through that long and extensive rundown that is the convention, because it is a long, exhaustive process that we go through. And one of the things that I did want to also point out too is that, look, again, the importance of going over the timeline is let's start getting ready for 2024 when the convention's in El Paso. Start thinking about temporary committees you want to be on between March and that, I don't know the exact dates of when the 2024 convention is going to be, but from that March on, from our primary to when our convention is going to be on, start thinking about, hey, do I want to serve on a temporary platform committee and rules committee? Talk to your local parties and trying to get that so we can get you in contact with the TDP staff and Chairman Hinojosa. Also, too, one of the things that was said a lot about was, you've all seen it, you all saw it. I know it's a little late now that we've passed the actual platform, but there is a platform. And I think Dina Tollerson, who is our parliamentarian, she's amazing. I think she said that we've had a platform since 1912. We've had a platform since 1912. What we do at convention is we amend our platform. So there will always be a platform no matter what. What happened at convention is we just weren't able to amend the platform because there was a quorum check. And yes, I think we all wish that when we got done with nominations and the party officers elections, we could have used a different wording to say that we are done with the party elections. And I think moving forward, you all will see a distinct difference of doing that. And conventions always change, like Andre said, because depending on the time, where you're at, what you're doing, if races are contested or not, things just move differently. So that is just important distinctions of things that came about during convention. And then, like Andre said, Saturday, August 6th, we had a special quasi committee of the whole with our platform committee, our SDEC members, party officers, and DNC members as well to approve those amendments to the existing platform that we had, which was a fantastic meeting. Big shout out to our TDP staff, our Texas Democratic Party staff, Marco, who does all of our party business at the party, Dino Tollerson, who was our parliamentarian, chair, not cheer, but we do cheer for him, Chair Gabota Hinojosa, and everyone else who was involved in that. We were able to successfully pass the amendments to the platforms. I believe we had 15 amendments to the amendment. If you're like Andre and myself, who are in the legislature, gave us big Texas legislature vibes with amendments to the amendments and passing it and going forth. It was a meticulous process. We felt like most folks, if not all folks' voices were heard, which was amazing. And so we just rattled those off, and we had some amazing things go through our platform. We had a really good emphasis on veterans, which I thought was amazing. I think there's going to be a lot of productive conversations and resolutions that'll come forth because of the conversation we had August 6th. But in a previous wrap up that Andre and I did, we talked about our favorite parts of the platform. And for me, Andre and I actually had the same one. You might have something different now, but for us, it was about voting rights. That was really important to make sure that we distinguished and we really talked about voting rights in our platform because of the things and the assault that you've seen happen with voting, not just locally here in Texas, but all across the country, and making sure that we're preserving it and we're talking about it. And I know voting for a lot of folks, they'll tell you, oh, they don't, it's not affecting them that much or things like that. But folks don't really understand voting is the fundamental reasoning that you can do X, Y, and Z, and you have your freedoms, because we have to go vote for representatives who will fight for those very things that we stand for. And so that was really cool to see all of that and see some of the things that were brought into our platform from those things as well too. And one of the other things that is really important because of the attacks that are going on right now. I don't know if you all have seen the news, but in Cincinnati, a 42-year-old man who actually was at the January 6th insurrection was killed by law enforcement earlier today because he was trying to infiltrate and penetrate the FBI headquarters in Cincinnati. And I bring that up because democracy is a key plank of our platform. It is so important to talk about democracy and how fragile it is. And it's actually right at the top of our platform when we talk about these things is, democracy and all of that, and making sure that it stays intact, that we're fighting for those freedoms. You all saw, it's really funny, Andre, right? Like in 2020, Democrats are getting attacked for saying defund the police. Very, very interesting how we've come full circle. Now, a former president who feels like he is above the law gets raided by the FBI, rightfully so, for inciting an insurrection and being a tax fraud conniver and a thief and everything else. And, we all know what Donald Trump represents. But then the Republicans all of a sudden are now saying defund the FBI and we should abolish the FBI, right? Like, these are the same folks that say we should not defund the police, but we are going to defund other aspects of law enforcement. This is why voting and protecting our democracy is so critical and important. That's why protecting our House majority, our US Senate majority, and protecting our White House in 2024 is super important. So those are flanks that were really important to me in our platform. I don't know if Andre wants to build on that from that August 6th meeting that we had to pass those amendments.
Yeah, I am actually particularly proud of our voting rights section, having gone through all of that at the legislature and the special sessions and the quorum break and all of this. But just so that I can bring something else to the conversation, I will say one thing that I am proud that our platform has always done is the Texas Democratic Party's platform has actually consistently for cycle after cycle actually been ahead of the national party platform on a lot of issues. The Texas platform called for the legalization of marijuana before the national platform did. It called for marriage equality before the national platform did. We are consistently leading on a huge number of issues, on like criminal justice issues, on social like equality and inequality issues, on economic issues. You can kind of take our platform and put it plank versus plank against the national party's platform. And honestly, I am more proud of the one that we construct here at home. I think it is more grassroots and not something that feels like it has been like focus group tested and watered down by the Beltway. It feels like something that we actually made like as grassroots Democrats here in Texas. And having gotten to see how some of the things go at the DNC, I'm really proud of how hands-on we're able to be, at least with that process here in Texas. That's for sure.
Yeah, and Andre, I think that's really important to note too, right? Is that we've been ahead of the curve, right? Like a lot of things that you're seeing, it's not like we're getting from California, New York, and us Texans here are like, oh, this is a wonderful idea. No, we're living it. We see it every day. We know how important it is to make sure we have a livable wage. We expand Medicaid. We make sure our public education school system is well funded. We say no to vouchers, like what the governor now is talking about. Things like that are in our platform that we're ahead of. That's really important for us as a party to do that. And I think for us, and we're Andre and I, like I said, we're just going to be talking for a few brief minutes still, and then we're going to take all of your questions because we want to make sure that we answer all your questions. And I think that after you have, we've had our local conventions, we've had everything in between, from having temporary platform committees and temporary rules committee and folks filing to run for different committees and be committee members for their Senate district. We had a convention that was a little different than usual. We were getting back in the swing of things, right? We had a virtual convention in 2020. We were all home. It was COVID. We're back in person. We're figuring it out. We didn't necessarily have quorum. We figured that out. We went to Saturday, August 6th. We passed our amended platform. So what's next? What are we supposed to do? Where do we go from here, right? We felt good. We've come off convention. We got to see Beto O'Rourke. We got to see a lot of rising stars, from Jasmine Crockett to James Tellerico to Christian Menifee to our statewide slate. We saw all of these folks now that we're going to be seeing in the future, hopefully taking all of these statewide positions away from Republicans. But we have an election in November, Andre. We've got an election in November where we got to make sure that we keep all of the gains we've made, try to go pick up some seats as well, too, and then make sure we're doing our job to elect Beto O'Rourke as our next governor, to elect Mike Collier as our next lieutenant governor, to elect Rochelle Garza as our next attorney general. These things are really important, and Janet Dudding and Jay Clayburgh and all the other folks that are running statewide or running your congressional seat. The reason it's really important to get involved, I'll give you one example. Ron DeSantis, the governor out of Florida, recently just suspended what we would call our district attorney, the equivalent to a district attorney here in Texas. Why? Because he refused to enact an abortion law that's restricting access for people to get abortion care and other medical cares. Folks, I'm here to tell you that is coming to a state near you. That's why it's really important to get to get the vote out to make sure we get Beto elected and lieutenant governor and get a new lieutenant governor, Mike Collier, getting Rochelle Garza as our next AG, because we don't want governors to now start abusing their power. We know Greg Abbott is good for that. He's already doing that in abusing his power. If you were in any local municipality during COVID and you were trying to stay safe, trying to keep other people safe, you saw what the governor did. He took away powers from the local jurisdictions without a special session and involving the legislature like he should have, and was taking away rights from folks like Clay Jenkins in Dallas, Lena Hidalgo here, in Harris County, Andy Brown in Travis, and even your local municipalities from Beaumont to Ector County to other places as well too. So we have to be really mindful of those things and making sure. That's why it's really important to get out the vote. If you're from Houston, Harris County, harrisdemocrats.org is the website to go to get involved. We want you to volunteer, come block walk with us, come text bank, come do all of these things with us, so that way we can get out the vote. TexasDemocrats.org as well too. You can actually find different events and different actions on TXDemocrats.org, where they'll be having different events around you, putting your zip code or your address, so you can get involved with any local candidate or any local party to make sure that we're talking to Democrats, get them energized and get them ready to go vote, but also getting involved in candidates so that way we can go flip some seats and shock people who believe that Democrats, this isn't our year. It's definitely our year. We definitely have momentum, and it's really time for us to get really involved and take all that momentum and put it into November 8th, so that way we can get Democrats elected up and down the ballot, and then also keep the gains that we've made here in Texas.
Yeah, while I am, a nerd who loves to talk about our party rules, our conventions, our processes, and all that, we have to remember the core of why we're in for this, and that's because the improvement of literally millions and millions of Texans' lives is in the balance with this election, right? That's true for every election. Democratic majorities in Texas means Medicaid expansion, which helps literally over 1 million people. We just flip a switch and we literally give healthcare to over 1 million people that don't have it in Texas. I don't know how else to paint as stark a picture as that's what it means for Democrats winning in Texas. So even though I love all this stuff, I love getting in the weeds with what our party's about, we always need to make sure that we are centering ourselves in that whatever debates we're having internally about our party, that in the end they just need to remain debates and not be fights, because the real fight is what we're up against in November, is what we're up against with the Republicans in the legislature. Those are the real fights. And this other stuff that we're working on, it's great to be passionate about, but we can't let that get in between us and making sure every Democrat wins up and down the ballot. That's just, can't think of any other way to put it like that.
That's so true, Andre. That's so true.
Yeah. And I know basically we want to hop to Q&A next, but there's one thing I want to get to, and I guess this can almost count the first question with Q&A, is kind of going just a little bit more into quorum, and specifically what happened with one of our co-chairs. And so I just want to walk through the technicalities of this. So after our statewide officer elections were complete, one of our co-chairs actually used, they said the phrase something like, "and that concludes party business," which was interesting. I actually didn't hear when she said that. I think I was literally too busy cheering you and Kendall winning. But that was said, and then about 2.5 to 3 minutes later, Party Secretary Lee Forbes ran out onto the stage and said, we actually still have party business to go. And so there have been questions did that adjourn the convention? And the answer is no, it did not. It is, I will straight up say that it is a very frustrating situation that this mistake really led a bunch of folks, understandably, to think that we were done.
Right.
But within our party rules and within Robert's Rules of Order, which is what we operate under, there are very specific ways for us to adjourn a convention, and someone just saying, and that concludes party business, unfortunately, does not do it. I care a lot about making sure everyone has a positive convention experience. I especially care about people whose first convention it is. That's why I dedicate so much time to doing like convention trainings and putting out a delegate guide. So for a minor mistake, or minor in terms of just like is just a couple of words said when they shouldn't be. That's what I mean by minor mistake. Just, a small thing like that to throw off what otherwise was a positive, like could have been a positive experience for a lot of people. I really share in that frustration, and the people that got misled by that, I am really sorry, and I'm really sorry that happened. And we have tried to already look at ways that like we can make sure it's more clear, like communication about how things are going to go. Because one of the things that's confusing about that final day, for instance, is with our rules, we can't just schedule and say, hey, we're going to have statewide elections go from 10:30 to noon, and then we're going to do platform at 1. We're not able to do stuff like that because we have to wait for these committee reports to come out. So we're at the mercy of those committees. So trying to find a way to cleanly communicate this to people. Some of the ideas that have been floated are maybe on the back of your credentials, there's literally like a little checklist for party business that people can go through and be like, okay, we finished rules. They can check that off so that they know, hey, here's the remaining party business. We're looking at stuff like that to try to prevent a situation like that from happening, because it admittedly was frustrating, and that did, in my opinion, ultimately contribute. There's a lot of things that contributed to us not having quorum, but some number of people hearing a message thinking it was okay to leave certainly probably contributed. There were also folks that left immediately after the chair's race because they were not happy with that. There were people that just trickled out because, hey, they had to catch a flight or catch a bus or whatever. Like, I totally get it. And I'm not trying to like blame individuals necessarily that had left. But again, just to clarify the technicality, just because someone had announced that we're done with party business, that actually doesn't mean anything in quotes within our rules. So that was unfortunately, kind of like a bruise on our overall convention that I thought went really, really well for our first one back, other than, that thing right there.
Yeah, I agree with that, Andre. And I think it's really important to really highlight that. Like, we're all, we all are working really hard to make sure that everyone's experience is the best that it can possibly be. We know we're not going to please everyone and everyone's going to be completely happy, but we try to make it an overall experience. And I too share Andre's sentiment about, we're really sorry that, that went that way. And I'm sure by the time we get to El Paso in 2024, we will have different ways of announcing things, whether it's, hey, we're close to losing quorum. I'm sure we're going to look at the schedule as well too. I know someone mentioned in the chat about having speakers possibly be speaking while the chair's race is going on, or some of the party officers' race is going on. What I'll say to that is, because of the count, that might be a little difficult and distracting for folks. Because you want to make sure that you're getting a count that's accurate. But the importance, though, is that we're all thinking of ways to make our convention better. We're all thinking of ways to make sure our rules and that platform is better. And so that's really what's important to us, and making sure that we hear from you all, things that can be done better and all of that great stuff as well, too. So sharing Andre's sentiments and thoughts as well, too, I definitely co-sign. So, well, Andre, we went a little bit past our 30 minutes. I thought we did really well there. We just plan to talk to y'all for 30 minutes and, like I said, make it conversational. So again, if you have any questions for us, which I know some of you do, you've put it in the chat, and I know Andre and I probably missed it. It'd be great to hear your voice and let us know who you are and where you're from and what question you got. The raise your hand function is in reactions, and then just raise your hand and then we can get you off mute. All right, Andres Lopez.
Hello, guys. From Bexar County, Senate District 25.
Nice.
This convention was unique in a way, and also very very, very long in ways that people, it wasn't very accessible for people that had handicaps. It was very expensive for them. $80 to rent the cart. I think that was one of the most that people were talking about for disabilities. People that they said they rather walk than pay $80 because they didn't have that money. I think we need to look into that even more and try to get the cost lower on that. And also I had a friend that was on the platforms, Steve Price, he was on, he said it was a mess at convention because they had to go vote, and then they didn't go back to their regular meetings for the platform. I think we need to have them be more involved in everything. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm gonna break your questions into two parts. The first one is about accessibility, which is something that we have been improving, but still easily has room for improvement within our party. One thing we did this year, the SCC actually voted to amend the budget explicitly to include hiring an accessibility coordinator for this convention, which to my knowledge had not been done for previous conventions. I think that was good, and that introduced, or that helped solve some issues. But for instance, I will just give, this is my personal opinion, and I'm not representing TDP when I say this, but having served on the convention planning committee, and I just kept watching our prices go up, I did not feel that the organizations that we were negotiating with to put on the convention, like within Dallas, were operating in good faith. Right. And there were several times where previously negotiated costs were increased on the party in short notice, and it was very, very frustrating. And some of those negotiations, I can't talk about the specific organizations and stuff, just due to how that kind of contract stuff goes. But it was so frustrating from a planning perspective. So to put it into perspective, the convention is already, we can kind of call it like a loss leader for the party, if you will. It's an investment that the party makes into our grassroots, into our delegates, into our candidates. And a good convention usually breaks even from the fundraising. This year we were met with much higher costs than expected, including on things that, in my opinion, should have been already established due to previous negotiations. But then also what happened was a lot of the corporate sponsors that normally would fund the Democratic convention had actually pulled out, because post January 6th, a bunch of corporate sponsors actually pulled out from doing Republican Party stuff. But then they have in their rules or bylaws, or just, the president of their board or whatever, just makes rules that like we have to donate equally between the two parties. So when they took away money from the insurrectionists, they actually also took away the money from our convention. And you had stuff, for instance, like C-SPAN traditionally had always sponsored the tote bags that would be at state party conventions. They did this for every state party for like the past several cycles. If you got a tote bag at a previous state convention, it was sponsored by C-SPAN. And they pulled out from that this year, and we were only notified, for instance, like maybe 6-ish weeks in advance. Does that sound about right, Odus?
Yeah.
And in order to get that many bags in that span of time, it would have been about $30,000 to $35,000 from the party. So we chose not to spend that amount of money, but also likewise, then we didn't have the tote bags. So I realized that went a little down a rabbit trail from accessibility. But in terms, that's going back to talking about in terms of the cost that like individual delegates faced. There was a real frustrating amount of last minute expenditures that I felt. I will be critical of the party when I think it's fair, and this is a situation where I think we just kept getting screwed over by third parties. And that was a really frustrating thing from our planning perspective. I don't know if there's anything you want to add on to that first part of his question.
Yeah, for that, I'll keep it brief too, is that Andre sits on the convention committee as well too. We were on the convention advisory committee, and we were sitting here, and trust me, a lot of the frustrations that you all were voicing at convention or before convention, we were sharing them as well too. But the reality is that we were, for lack of a better term, getting screwed by third-party vendors. I know that the party is going to be looking at that. We're all going to be looking at that heading into the new convention, convention in 2024. Also, the other conversation we have to have as well too is that, look, I know costs suck. Trust me, if we could do everything for free, we would absolutely do it for free. But convention normally, like Andre says, does not break even. And I think this is why it's important to have conversations like this. I've always told folks, for those of you that know that I work for John Rosenthal, we're not afraid to tell folks how the process is, because it's important you know it, so that way we can make so we can raise our voices and talk about these things. And so, things do cost. They do cost money. And of course, we were trying to, I know that TDP had a program for college students, so that way they can come, and young folks can come as well too. I know our Texas Young Democrats as well too, trying to do things like that too, fundraisers, different things like that. So that's why I think it's really important to start having these conversations now and being well prepared for, okay, this is what is coming. So that way, I don't know how else to say this, but $80 doesn't look and sound as ridiculous when we get to 2024 as it did now. And I think, again, with the accessibility, Andre is right. We are very much, you all know this that are from Harris County, I am not afraid to be critical of our own party, even being the chair of our county party. But in this case, I think, grace should be given for the fact that this was our first in-person convention in a while. Folks are trying to get there. We're trying to get back into the groove of it, right? We're trying to make sure that we are doing the best that we can to make sure that it's accessible and a great experience for all.
Yeah, and then the second part of your question, if I'm trying to make sure, because I should have written it down but I didn't, was more about like it was about like was it about the processes on Saturday of like what we could do due to like how long Saturday was going, more or less? Is that like accurate, Andres?
No, it was more like the platform committee.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And then they didn't go back to finish.
Yeah. So part of that is, again, where I was saying, like, we are at the way it is currently structured is that we are at the mercy of when these like committees, their reports come out. And so like the reason platform had to keep like bouncing back is because is like, they would be working and then they would be told, hey, we're about to like vote for the officers, so you need to recess so you can come down to do that. And just not knowing the timing of all that. There are like solutions that we are looking at from a schedule perspective, like, hey, can we remove the party officer vote from being tied to the nominations committee so that it's then just a straightforward process in our rules, which would then also allow us to like schedule and say, at 11 a.m., we will cast a vote for party chair, right? Like, is that something we can do that allows us to give a little more structure to that Saturday? Or is there something like, hey, we're going to have these committees actually start meeting on the Friday before, right. And then if they've still got work to do, they can start working on Saturday morning. That would require us to shift around the schedules a little bit, but it also helps take a lot of pressure off, keeping as many people around. you know, there are pros and cons to all these though, because for instance, if we wanted to do those Friday meetings, that means having our caucus elections earlier in the day. And a lot of times those have always been traditionally held in the afternoon to give people that morning to travel. So we're looking at either cutting out people on the early side of things, or if people are leaving early, cutting them out on the late side of things. So there's pros and cons, but the important thing is that we are having all these discussions and debates because I don't think our convention is run perfectly, and I think we should always be working towards perfection, even if it's going to take us multiple iterations to get there.
Right, and to Andre's point as well too. Again, just be mindful. Little grace given. First convention in person in 4 years. It's different. You sometimes think that you got everything covered and you're talking to everybody, and then you always miss the one thing. Or folks have all these different schedules they have to, like speaking, folks have these after parties and things that are overlaying on top of each other that usually happen in conventions. So I believe we're going to get it right in 2024 to the best of our ability, because we know nothing is perfect, but a lot of this input and feedback is very helpful for TDP and folks like ourselves who sit on the SDC, and a lot of the SDC members that are on as well too, new SDC members as well too. So Mathis, please, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. You are muted still, sir. Did we ask to? There we go. Oh, you're muted again.
Hold on. I'll click the ask.
There we go. Oh, now we go in there.
There you go.
I have been attending state conventions for longer than most of the people who are logged in here have been alive. My first one was back in the early 1970s. This was a well-run convention, even though there were some problems, as we have discussed. What I think was particularly valuable is that there was, even among those who were opponents running for the various state offices, there was not the rancor, the meanness, the vindictiveness that I have seen in the past. And that is important, because even if you were not in the majority, you don't walk out of the convention chapped, unhappy, and unwilling to continue to be a part of the movement. And I'll keep it short and simple. So I would say to the leaders and even to the candidates who were running, good job.
Thank you, Mathis. We appreciate that comment, and we'll definitely pass it along to folks like Kim Olson and Carol Robinson who ran races and fell short, and to Chairman Gilberto Hinojosa and our other party leaders now who are going to be doing the ship for the next.
One thing that I would just correct: the computer wants to go ahead and use my full name. Everybody knows me by my nickname, Bujo, B-U-J-O. It's simple, easy, and I hope memorable. But I remember some of the conventions we had in Austin where after it was over, you thought you had been fighting the devil. And I did not sense that this time around.
Yeah, and to Andre's point too, as well, like we have to remember who our opponent is. It's not each other, it's the Republicans, right? Like keeping it at a debate, but not an argument and a fight, because that's what gets us in trouble and caps us at flipping seats statewide, and flipping seats locally as well, and then also keeping the gains that we've made. So again, appreciate that compliment and that comment, and we'll definitely pass it along to leadership.
But it's not only the Republicans, it's the unaffiliated and the the uninvolved. And if they, by reading the newspapers or watching the television, feel that this group of people, I can't trust them with my vote, I can't trust them with support, then we have lost, even if we haven't won. But this time around, I didn't see that. For example, for the race for chairman between Gilbert and his opponent, there was not the bitterness that sometimes comes out of those kinds of contests.
Right. So again, appreciate the words, and we'll make sure to pass that along, and make sure that we also keep ourselves accountable to keep that same positive vibes and spirit at convention, and remembering that we're Democrats first, and then we're in this fight together. Rosalie.
Thank you. Coming here from bathtubs with the grandkids. I too have been going to convention for a long time. My first convention was 1980. And so I've attended 20 some odd state conventions. I wanted to talk about not what happened in this last convention, because I think that you and Andre did a great job of recapping what happened. But going forward, what's going to happen, because in 2 years, the convention is going to be a presidential convention. So we're not going to be having the elections for our statewide officers. And of course, we will be electing the SDC members as well as the committee members for resolution platform and rules and credentials. But so what I'm wondering is, for the convention that's coming up, I'm thinking about that. What I heard is that it's going to be in El Paso, and that the general session is going to be out in an open field. And I wanted to see if you have any information on that, because I'm thinking about the heat. And also, you were talking about accessibility. Andres brought that up, and it's so important for all of us to make sure that everyone has the accommodations that they need so that they can participate to the fullest. And so that was my question. And also just talk about that as presidential. We're not going to have some of the things that happen here at this convention in El Paso.
Yeah, that's a great question, Rosalie. I don't even think, well, so for those of you that don't know, we just elected a whole new SDC slate. So we don't have yet. Folks have put in their so what happens, again, let you guys in on the process, and we have SDC members in here who are not familiar, but we have new SDC members. They've all gotten emails. There's about like 9 committees. I'm not going to pretend to act like I remember all of them. I know some of them, but I can't remember all of them. And they're trying to delineate which committee they want to sit on. So we don't have committees yet. We just know that the convention is going to be in El Paso in 2024. I personally have not heard about the open field for general session. I don't know if Andre has heard that himself, but I think that will all be talked about, making sure we're doing what's best for everyone. And like you said, it is in a presidential year. And also that reminds me, keep in mind, folks, Houston, good old Houston, Texas, we have put in a submission to get the 2024 DNC as well too. So fingers crossed that we can get that thing here in Texas, because it's really important to show the country that Texas is where it starts. Once you flip Texas, we get no more Republican president. So we're hoping for that. But yeah, accessibility is going to be very important. We're going to have everyone having a seat at the table that's representing the different constituency caucuses, like environmental, AAPI, and so forth. And then also the Senate districts as well too. So that'll be really important. And I don't know.
It'll be congressional districts by then, but
districts, that's right.
That's a different thing. Okay, so regarding first of all, yeah, Houston DNC 2024. I will have y'all know, actually, I will let y'all in on, actually, I don't know if this is a secret because I feel bad because I had to miss his speech, but DNC chair Jamie Harrison was actually in town. He spoke to our convention, and the reason we were able to align that is because he was in Texas for the site visit in Houston. Houston is a very, very finalist. I believe we are in the final 4 for cities to host. And in 2020, Houston actually won the vote of the DNC site selection committee. But the chairman at the time decided a different city. Ended up being a moot point because, 2020. But I'm just saying, we've already been able to win 1 vote. And I think maybe 2024, I think people wanting to, maybe stand up against some of the laws Texas has been doing, I think gives us another good shot at it. Okay, El Paso 2024. I will be upfront and say that I actually spoke against hosting in El Paso. I did not have a vote because as a member of the DNC, I'm not on the SDEC. But during debate, I spoke against El Paso. The other choice, the other finalist was San Antonio. And so let me just talk about a little bit why that was. I personally am very excited to go to El Paso. I know that I'm going to have a great time in El Paso. My issue with El Paso actually was all about accessibility. And in San Antonio, we know with the Henry B. Gonzalez Convention Center and like connected hotels that is not going to be a similar issue. As far as being in an open field for general session, that is not something I've heard. What I do know is that part of the bid process that El Paso like included was that they had they have a baseball stadium that can seat up to whatever, it was like 20,000-ish or something. It was enough for our general session, and they offered that as a potential space. We are not at all even close to the point where we have things on the schedule for 2024, let alone where they will be. I will say that one of my concerns, that this is something we do know about 2024, is that all of the like caucuses and breakouts and stuff do not fit in a single building in El Paso. Now, what I have since learned is that the block of buildings that we are going to be in, which is like combined hotels, convention center, stuff like that, funny enough, is actually a more compact space than the Dallas Convention Center just was. So while there might be some weird stuff about getting around and having to move between buildings, it's actually going to be in a smaller place in terms of literal like square footage. I hope I am on the convention planning committee again. That is something that I care about a lot, and I'm going to be paying very, very close attention to making sure we execute on some of these issues with El Paso. Because again, as I said, I'm gonna be doing okay, but I am not representative of everyone at the convention, and we need to make sure everyone is able to have a successful convention regardless of the host city.
Yeah, no, and that's very true too. I think the one thing in Dallas for us, we got our steps in for sure with the Kay Bailey Hutchison Convention Center. I saw some hands that were up, but I think everyone has raised their hand down. Jennifer Cohen asked, how does one volunteer for the Convention Planning Committee? So the Convention Planning Committee, so there's a convention committee for the SDEC members. So you have to sit on SDEC, and then the chair can make appointments to those committees if he so chooses. So those are the only folks that are on those committees that aren't currently sitting on the SDEC. And like I said, there's 2 committee members from each Senate district, the 31 Senate district, and then there's normally 2 representatives from the different constituency caucuses that we have, which can all be found on txdemocrats.org. I can't remember every single one of them. We have Young Democrats, environmental, LGBTQIA, labor, all those different things. And so that's how folks get on those committees. And then what ends up happening is that when convention comes around, there's usually a convention advisory committee that's made up of that convention committee that we have, that standing convention committee, and then also chair appointments, which usually have leadership from that area. So for instance, when we did the convention planning committee, we had the convention committee originally, and then we added Christy Noble, who's the chair of the Dallas County Democratic Party. We had the vice chair as well, Cardell Coleman, and then some other leadership folks in Dallas, and then some other folks who were previous convention directors sit on that committee as well too. So that's how you get on that process. And this is why we're having this conversation, to make sure that we're having these conversations early, so that way you know how to get involved in the numerous committees, SDC, which will now be CBEC by the time that we talk about it.
I'm gonna have to snag you on a technicality. The SDC is as created by statute. It's the State Democratic Executive Committee. So even though we'll be going to our CD caucuses, we still get to be the SDC. I gotta get you on that one.
That's right. Because it's state, not Senate. So by that time, we'll be organizing that way as well too. So that's how you get involved with that.
And for people that aren't on the SDC, but you care greatly about it, the SDC is still a representative body, just like, anything else in a republic. You can lobby these folks, and they are elected, and some number of them are going to be, you are going to be a voter for some number of them, to be honest. And I say wield your power as a constituent. Like that's what I do. If I want something done at the city council level or whatever, like I go to my representatives. Well, these party officers, they are your representative as well. You have 2 guaranteed SDC people, again, from your just geographically, but you're also going to have some number of people that represent you through various constituency caucuses. And I say lobby them. You should say, hey, we should not accept less than this, or and folks are up for elections every 2 years. And if you've had people that are not representing your interest at the party, vote accordingly. At some point, I really say tap into that organizational power that I know we've all got as active, grassroots Democrats, and apply some of that inwards to the party. And it doesn't just all have to be used during election season or during, city council or the legislature. You can use it on party officers too.
Yeah, that's leveraging your power as that constituent of that congressional district or that area is really important. And this is why we want to continually have conversations like this and making sure you're talking to, I see Glenn Etienne, who's in Senate District 7. I saw Angela Williams, Senate District 7, Tony Middleton Lewis in 13, Vincent Sanders, who's a Senate District Chair. I see a lot of folks on here. I'm sorry if I'm missing you. I mentioned Rose Salas, who's on the DNC. So there's a lot of folks who were on here. Ava Graves, who's the chair of Jefferson County Democratic Party. So there is leadership that you can definitely go knock on their door and make sure that they are making sure that your voices are being heard at the TDP level and in leadership level. And look, I'm sitting as the chair of the party here and the treasurer as well too. It's important to have all this feedback so we can go back and have these conversations as well too. So any more questions?
There was a question. It ended up DM'd to me, but okay, cool. Basically the question was just they asked if I could please say a little bit more about the change to congressional districts.
Okay.
So that was actually the literal final thing that our convention did before we lost quorum was passed rules item number 16, I think is what it finally ended up being, which was actually my rule. And long story short, it is reorganizing our party. Currently we are based around Senate districts and senatorial districts, and we're moving over to congressional districts. There are a lot of reasons why I believe we should do that. I'm definitely not going to bore you all with all of that. I can link the original resolution, which kind of explains it. And I've actually done some live stream discussions talking about it. If you really want to go in the weeds, I won't hold everyone here, for 30 minutes going through all of it. The important thing is though, actually for the average delegate, you're not really going to see a major change in what your convention is like, because you're still going to show up to a local convention. If you were in a county that was doing county conventions, then it will literally look identical. And if you were in a county that was doing senatorial districts, then just rather than showing up to your senatorial district, it will be showing up to your congressional district. But it will be the same structure. You'll still have chairs of those caucuses. You will still, when you get to convention, you'll still be electing, it'll be the presidential year. So we'll be electing our national delegates, but then, we'll be electing our SDC members and our convention committee members, and you'll be doing all that. It's just, rather than me showing up to a room that says SD 14, I'm showing up to a room that says CD 37. And that's really what is going to be. So for the average person, you're not going to see a difference. It's not really going to affect your scheduling. In terms of the SDC, it does add some more. It actually adds some more members to the SDC, which I think is honestly kind of net neutral. But actually, just like what we went through this year, which we technically went through a redistricting year on the SDC. So you had some districts which no longer had an incumbent, or some districts that had maybe multiple people in that. It'll actually just be the same way. There will be some, districts that will be vacant, or some that'll have other folks in it. Either way, the current SDC that we just elected, they're serving their full 2-year term. Nothing changes for them. We are not changing a single election that happened. It'll be, and they will serve that term all the way out. And then at the end of the next convention, we'll have elected our SDC members, we'll have elected everything. And then the second they are approved by the convention floor, then we snap our fingers and we are organized by congressional district instead of Senate district. That's what it is. So for the average delegate, it might sound like there's a bunch of changes going on, but your day as you go through convention and as you go through your local conventions will be, it'll be the same still. Most people won't see a change. The biggest changes will be seen by folks that are used to like doing stuff on the SDC. They will see a change. I hope that answered it. If there's any more technical stuff, I'd be happy to go into a little bit more technical stuff on it if you had that. But otherwise, I will very briefly plug. I have a public Facebook page, which is just facebook.com/Democrat Andre Treiber. I did a whole Q&A about this, and we did about like a 30-minute Q&A on this rule as a live stream just last month. So if you really, really want to get in the weeds, we went way in depth on that one, and that's where I think the best place to send you to would be.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that update on that rule change, Andre. And I know Tech and TDP will be starting to get folks prepared. We've been in conversation with folks about this, making sure we're getting our Congress people prepared as well too about this change as well. Carolyn Riggs.
Yes, sir. I was thinking, I have been at numerous conventions myself, and I do remember in my advanced age that on occasion there has been a note made verbally and otherwise that do not leave right after this or that or the other, because if we do not have a quorum, we may not be able to, as what happened, finish the business that we came there for. So I'm thinking this should be a lesson learned. Make sure that's in the information so people know you do have to stay. Everybody that I talked to, they were almost semi-harassed because I said, no, we're not leaving. You have to stay to the end, because stuff happens when people leave and there's a few people there and it might not be good. Well, it might not be good, but we're going to stay there to, do our part. Of course, I was driving, but that's a separate issue. I mean, seriously, they knew, everybody knew that you got to stay. But when there was a big mass leaving, it's like, my God, they parted the Red Sea and everybody's crossing over. No pun intended. Well, maybe. That's it.
Yeah.
We need to make a note of that. It will happen again.
Absolutely.
I'm too old to be letting this happen. I'm just letting you know.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Yeah, I'll just say, like, again, I am openly exploring and discussing ways that we can either adjust the schedule or adjust the way delegates are communicated to. There are a lot of different roadblocks in each way, and I don't think there's any one perfect way. At least not that anyone I know has found, because, for instance, cell phone reception was so bad in that room that like staff, they were actually primarily having to use like walkie-talkie to make sure stuff was timely. In order to get, like, for instance, Wi-Fi for the convention wide, it would have added on, I'm not exaggerating, like several hundreds of thousands of dollars to be able to do that. So some solutions that are like related to that are not ideal. There's a lot of different ways. The important thing is that since much like how for those that went to the Alamo Dome convention, how that was, how should we say, less than ideal. And we started working immediately after that convention to make sure stuff in 2018 and forward was better. Likewise, these conversations are happening now so that they are not going to be rushed conversations later, and that they're already things that people are talking about what we can do going forward to perfect on the process.
Carolyn, you still have a question?
I don't have a question. My point was, you missed my whole point. Get that information out that when you go to a convention, you need to stay through the whole process, and that it is a process and everybody needs to stay. All those people, if they had never been to a convention, or very few, they have no clue what went on. Since the people that when I was way back before you guys were born, literally probably, were telling me, they said politics could be fun. I said, are you crazy? Well, no, because it is if you participate with the right people. And they told me, so I just passed on my little humorous harassment. You have to stay to the end because then you know what happened. Of course, our end, in my opinion, got cut off. So we need to not do this. You guys are so young, you know, you're going to be here 30, 40 years longer than some of us, literally, maybe. So we need to get it right now. It's kind of like, I need the Astros to win another World Series. It's the same kind of thing. I'm not kidding, people. I was working early voting, man. I got a t-shirt with the crew on the back. When I went to early voting the next day, I'm on that. That's it. Thank you.
Love your enthusiasm and energy, Carolyn, as always. One of Harris County's own. So no, that's definitely true. We definitely need to get that information out there. And I think to Andre's point, that's what he was, alluding to. Belinda, this will be the last question because I want to get people out of here. I know it's whatever night it is, a Thursday night. All my days run together now. So it's a Thursday night and I know folks want to go do their own thing. Belinda.
I just want to end on a positive note. I think this was the best one so far and we're getting it right. One note would be to do what Rosalie was saying, was do a walkthrough for first timers, not a tight schedule, but what to expect at El Paso would be nice, the things coming, because the convention is built for your choice. And that's the key, is to decide what you want to attend to. So kudos to all the planners. It was really great.
Thank you, Belinda. And yeah, and this is one of the things that I think we'd encourage folks too. One of the things that is a practice, and again, I think a lot of folks are getting their feet wet again because it's been so long since we did in-person trainings and things like that. But having delegate trainings for your what will still be your Senate districts, having that with your delegates, our committee members, and here in Harris County, our Senate district chairs, they get a list of those delegates who are delegates and able to email them and say, hey, we're meeting before this. I know SC13 down here does a great job. Want to highlight them of doing that. They're always on top of it, and make sure you're doing those trainings and having those conversations before you get to convention, because the schedule for convention is so jam-packed. It is a lot going on and they overlay on top of each other. You're trying to go to this party and you want to go to this caucus and you're with this caucus and you're in leadership in that caucus and you're in general session and things like that. So being proactive and thinking of all those things is definitely something that we're going to be doing as a party, and also letting everyone as well to know about. Andre, you have any closing thoughts?
I am very happy to have been here and joined y'all tonight. Before we all hop off, I'll throw all my contact info and social media in the chat. I am happy to hear anyone's thoughts about convention or just other party rules stuff. If you ever want to bounce stuff off a process nerd in the party, I will not say I'm your only guy, because we got a lot of process nerds, but I'm happy to be one of them. Yeah, again, thank you very much for having me to have this this talk with y'all, and we can get back together when we're approaching the next one, and we can do some of these trainings that we're talking about need to be done. At this point, I've got the whole thing memorized.
Yeah, and I think that it's really important, as we leave, don't forget that convention was great. We've had these conversations. We were able to talk about the process, but go get involved. Go get involved. Make sure that you're staying up to date with the candidates in your areas, getting involved with your local party, getting involved with your different candidates and the state party as well too. Look, our fragile democracy is on the line. You see what the Republicans are saying out there. The election for them is still stolen 2 years after the fact. Folks don't want to protect your rights as abortion rights. Folks are laughing at the fact that 19 children were gunned down at an elementary school. That's where we're at right now. So we need all hands on deck. My challenge every time in Harris County when I'm talking to our folks is go get 5 people in your neighborhood, go get 5 people in your family, get them to the polls, get them to volunteer, because that is very, very critical in our mission to keeping Democrats elected, but most importantly, electing people who are going to protect and preserve your rights. Continually make good trouble, continually make necessary trouble, because our fragile democracy absolutely demands it. I love you all. You all have a good night, and we'll definitely be talking to you soon. Bye.
Y'all have a good one.